What truly happened inside Taehyung's home the night it was breached? And why did Jungkook demand the culprit's immediate arrest? The truth is darker, closer, and far more heartbreaking than anyone imagined. Before diving into this shocking revelation, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your reaction might reveal more than you realize. Why did Taehyung freeze the moment investigators revealed a new detail? Why did Jungkook's voice shake with anger when he insisted that the culprit must be arrested now? And why does every new clue point not outward toward strangers, but inward, toward someone dangerously close? Could the truth behind the break-in be far darker and far more personal than anyone imagined? The storm surrounding Taehyung's house break-in had already become one of the most unsettling cases in recent entertainment history, but the revelations that surfaced today ignited a wave of disbelief across fans, analysts, and even security experts. What if the person behind the crime wasn't a random intruder? Not an obsessive stranger, not a distant threat, but someone who had once walked comfortably inside that home. Someone whose presence was familiar? Someone who knew Taehyung well enough to slip past the walls he believed were safe? This question hangs like a blade above everything that happened next, cutting deeper with each newly uncovered detail. The story begins on a quiet evening that was never meant to be remembered for tragedy. Taehyung had returned home from a recording session, exhausted but content, unaware that someone had already been inside his house moments earlier, touching things they had no right to touch, stepping into rooms they had no reason to enter, lingering in the shadows with a purpose that makes the skin crawl even now. When Taehyung opened the front door, he felt nothing unusual. No misplaced object, no sound, no sign of trespass. The intruder had already vanished, or so everyone thought. Hours later, when the security team discovered the breach and accessed the internal CCTV backup, the image that appeared on the screen sent a shockwave through the room. A figure hooded, moving with the precision of someone who knew every blind spot, every camera angle, every moment Taehyung was likely to be away. How could a stranger possess this level of familiarity? How could anyone move so confidently through a house they had supposedly never seen? But the deeper shock came when Taehyung saw something the others didn't immediately recognize. A gesture, a habit, a slight tilt of the head, a movement of the hands, something that stabbed him with a familiarity so painful he could barely speak. He whispered something under his breath, so quietly it was almost missed. The room fell into suffocating silence as he stared at the screen with widening eyes, his breathing thin and uneven. When the investigators leaned in and asked if he recognized the figure, Taehyung didn't answer. He simply shook his head, but his trembling hands told a different story. Word spread quickly among those close to him, and when Jungkook heard about Taehyung's reaction, he arrived almost instantly, storming into the room with a mix of fear and fury tightening every line of his face. He demanded to see the footage for himself, and the instant the video began to play, his jaw clenched so tightly that the veins in his neck rose. He paced. He cursed under his breath. And then, in a voice that felt like a command carved into stone, he said, "Find them. Arrest them. No more delays." What was it that Jungkook saw in that footage that made him react with such raw intensity? What detail made him believe that the culprit wasn't just a threat, but a betrayal? This is where the story turns darker, twisting like a knife into the open wound of trust. Investigators soon realized that the intruder knew the layout of the home too intimately. They navigated the hallway without hesitation. They bypassed the guest room, as if aware it was empty. They headed straight toward Taehyung's personal space with alarming certainty. And then came the most chilling part. The intruder paused in front of a framed photograph, one taken years ago, showing Taehyung smiling with someone whose face now haunted every theory. Why pause there? Why touch the glass with such familiarity? Why linger with a quietness that looked almost sorrowful rather than malicious? When the footage was enhanced frame by frame, a startling discovery emerged. A ring. A specific ring. A ring that wasn't mass-produced. A ring that had been seen publicly before, on the hand of someone within Taehyung's circle. Someone who had once been trusted. Someone who had recently disappeared from public view with no explanation. The question that fans worldwide are now asking is almost too painful to voice. Was the person behind the break-in someone Taehyung once considered family? While investigators refuse to confirm, insiders hint that the answer is disturbingly close to yes. The deeper the investigation went, the more emotional strain Taehyung began to show. His voice cracked during questioning. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. He avoided looking at the footage again. He isolated himself, leaving Jungkook to confront the growing storm alone. And Jungkook, who has always been protective, grew even more restless. He stayed near Taehyung at all times. He monitored every update. He pushed authorities harder than anyone else. Why? Because he knew how deeply this betrayal cut. Because he recognized the pain of realizing that danger didn't come from outside. It came from someone Taehyung once welcomed inside, at one point. After investigators delivered new information confirming their suspicions, Jungkook's reaction was explosive. He slammed his hand on the table and demanded immediate action. "This is someone close," he said through gritted teeth. "Someone who shouldn't have been anywhere near him ever again. Arrest them. Now." Fans who heard the leaked audio clip felt the weight of his desperation. It wasn't anger alone. It was fear. Fear of what could have happened if Taehyung had walked in just a few minutes earlier. Fear of what the intruder might attempt next. Fear of losing someone he cares about more deeply than the public ever knew. And Taehyung? He broke down when he heard Jungkook's voice shaking like that. He realized that the case was no longer just about stolen items or breached privacy. It was about trust violated, boundaries shattered, memories contaminated, and a truth so bitter that even speaking it out loud might cause more damage than silence. The investigation continues, but one thing is already clear. The person behind this break-in is not a stranger. They are someone with a history, a connection, a past intertwined with Taehyung's life in a way that makes the betrayal sting with unbearable cruelty. Who is this person? Why did they come back? What were they looking for? And why did they choose the one night Taehyung was most vulnerable? Authorities promise answers soon, but the clues left behind paint a picture more haunting than any official statement. A ring, a photograph, a familiar movement, a betrayal wrapped in silence. This story is far from over, and the truth, when fully revealed, may shake the world far more violently than the break-in itself. As the investigation tightens around the mysterious figure, one question echoes louder than the rest. What happens when the person you fear most is the person you once trusted completely? And when that truth finally comes to light, will Taehyung and Jungkook be ready for the storm it unleashes? But what happened after Jungkook's outburst in the investigation room? What truth did Taehyung whisper when no one else was listening? And why did the lead detective suddenly order the entire team to prepare for a high-risk arrest just minutes later, despite not revealing the suspect's name? Was the truth finally too dangerous to be spoken aloud until every officer was in position? The room that once felt suffocating with tension now felt frozen, as if time itself had paused to witness the moment Taehyung's world cracked open. The investigators didn't miss the way Taehyung's shoulders shook, nor the way Jungkook stepped closer, almost as if he was shielding him from a truth that neither of them wanted to face. Something had shifted dramatically. Something had broken. Taehyung was still staring at the enhanced frame. A still image of the hooded intruder paused mid-step. His eyes were red, his breathing shallow, his fingers digging into the sleeves of his jacket as though trying to hold himself together. When an officer gently asked him if he was ready to continue, Taehyung said nothing. Instead, his gaze drifted downward, to the ring now clearly visible in the intruder's hand, and that single detail seemed to crush the last remaining piece of denial he had been clinging to.